The late afternoon sun cast long lines of gold through the windows of transcontinental flight 447, giving the cabin a warm, almost peaceful glow. Passengers shuffled in arranging bags, folding jackets, and settling into the hum of pre-flight noise. Everyone seemed wrapped in their own world business meetings, vacations, family reunions, whatever waited for them after landing in first class. Sarah Mitchell lowered herself gently into her seat. One hand rested over her rounded belly, the familiar protective gesture of someone 7 months pregnant. Her breaths were slow and careful. Each movement required precision these days. The flight attendant, a young woman with kind eyes, leaned down with a soft smile. "Can I get you anything, ma'am? Water, pillow, blanket?" Sarah returned the smile, tired but warm. "Water would be lovely. And maybe a little extra space when we level out. Baby's decided today is a big kicking day." The flight attendant laughed. "We'll make sure you're comfortable. Just press the call button if you need anything." Passengers around her offered gentle smiles. A few nodded politely. Pregnant women attract a very specific kind of attention, the soft, cautious, respectful kind. People opened overhead bins for her. Someone offered to store her bag. Even the man across the aisle, usually buried in his phone, told her, "If you need anything, just ask." To all of them, she was just another expectant mother, fragile, delicate, in need of care. None of them knew her past. None of them knew who she used to be. None of them knew that beneath the calm face and gentle gestures was someone who had once commanded danger like an art form. The aircraft pushed back from the gate. The engines spooled up with a rising howl, vibrations pulsing through the cabin floor. Sarah closed her eyes, inhaling. Not fear, not anxiety, muscle memory. Once, the roar of engines had been her heartbeat, her home, her armor. But today, she was just a passenger, or so she hoped. The jet lifted into the sky, climbing through layers of thinning clouds until the world below became nothing but soft white fields. Seatbelt signs dinged off. A few people stood to stretch. The cabin crew began their routine. Sarah shifted in her seat, adjusting her posture to ease the pressure on her back. Her baby responded with a firm kick, a reminder of how much her life had changed. She whispered, "Easy, sweetheart. Mommy's just flying." She sipped water, breathed steadily, and watched the sky stretch endlessly across the window. A peaceful flight, a quiet journey, exactly what she needed. But fate rarely listened to what people needed. Somewhere near 37,000 feet, far above the safety of land, far above anyone's ability to simply walk away, the world inside Flight 447 changed. It began with something barely noticeable, a tiny shift in the jet's pitch, a subtle rise of the nose. The kind of movement only experienced travelers or pilots would sense. Sarah felt it immediately. Her eyes snapped open. The plane wasn't leveling. It wasn't holding altitude. It was climbing. Too steeply, she unbuckled her belt, rising carefully. Her stomach tightened not from the baby, but from the instinct she had trained into her bones long before pregnancy. The climb increased. Then came a sound that shouldn't exist in the middle of a calm cruise. A thud, a heavy, sickening thud from the cockpit. A flight attendant walking down the aisle paused, frowning. "Did you hear?" Before she finished, a second sound followed, a body collapsing. Passengers looked around, confused. A few thought it was turbulence. A few thought someone had dropped a cart. But Sarah knew. Her pulse hammered. Something was wrong in the cockpit. Very wrong. The plane lurched upward again, forcing passengers back into their seats. Gasps filled the cabin. A drink spilled across a tray table. A baby began to cry. Then the cabin speakers crackled. A voice shaky, strained, barely managed a sentence. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing a temporary, a choking sound. Cut him off." Silence. Sarah stood immediately. A flight attendant rushed past her toward the cockpit, knocking on the door. "Captain, first officer, please respond." Nothing. Passengers murmured in rising panic. "What's happening? Why are we climbing?" Someone called the captain. The plane tilted sharper. Some people grabbed armrests. Someone shouted for oxygen masks. The flight attendants tried to keep everyone calm, but their pale faces betrayed them. Sarah placed a hand on the wall to steady herself as she felt the plane's unnatural rise. Her mind raced. She knew this feeling. She had lived this danger before. Her stomach tightened not from fear, but recognition. She whispered, "Please, no." The cockpit door remained silent. To silent, that was the moment when the engine's hum shifted again, deeper, strained. Warning alarms faintly echoed through the locked cockpit door. Then the intercom crackled, not with a human voice, but with the shrill, unmistakable sound of an altitude alert. Passengers panicked. We're climbing way too high. Oh God, what's happening up there? Somebody do something. Sarah knew the truth. Both pilots were down. She felt it in her bones. The aircraft was climbing because no one was controlling it. Her breath tightened. She looked down at her belly, at the life inside her. "Stay with me," she whispered. Every fiber of her past screamed at her to move, to act, to take command, but she wasn't who she used to be. Not anymore. She had buried that. Part of her life, or so she thought. The plane shook slightly as it pierced colder air at a dangerous altitude. Passengers clutched each other. A flight attendant returned from the cockpit, tears in her eyes. They're not responding. Neither of them. Panic erupted fully. Now people sobbing, praying, shouting. But then something even stranger happened. A shadow passed by the cabin windows. Then another. A few passengers gasped, pointing. "What is that?" Sarah turned her head, looked out the window, and her blood ran cold. Two fighter jets slid into formation beside the aircraft, close enough that the military insignia gleamed under the sunlight. F-15, Strike Eagles, a sight no civilian wants to see outside their airplane window. A collective scream rose through the cabin. Someone shouted, "Are we being shot down?" The flight attendants tried to calm everyone, but they were shaking too hard to hide the truth. The radio inside the cockpit crackled, loud enough for the sound to leak through the thin door. A voice boomed, powerful, commanding, "Attention aircraft 447. You are not responding. Identify yourselves immediately." The first officer did not respond. The captain did not respond, and the plane continued its uncontrolled climb. The fighter jets tightened. Formation. Then something happened that made Sarah's legs nearly buckle. The radio crackled again, but this time, the fighters weren't speaking to the pilots. They were speaking to her, to the part of her she had tried to leave behind forever. Phantom 1. The fighter pilot's voice cracked with disbelief. "Is that really you up there?" Her chest constricted. Her lungs froze. Her heart dropped. Nobody on that plane knew. Her past, nobody knew who she truly was. Nobody knew that the nickname Phantom 1 had once belonged to her, and only one type of person carried a call sign like that. A legendary, classified, Special Forces fighter pilot. The passengers saw only a pregnant woman, but the skies remembered the truth. Sarah stepped into the cockpit, and the world behind her disappeared. The door sealed shut, muting the chaos in the cabin. The cockpit smelled faintly of ozone and metal, the air thick with tension, and the steady, high-pitched alarm echoing from the dead autopilot. Both pilots remained slumped, motionless, and the plane drifted dangerously off course. A flickering warning on the overhead panel painted the cockpit in urgent red. She eased into the captain's seat, her breath shaking for the first time since this nightmare began. Her hands hovered over the controls with a familiarity her passengers would never understand. She hadn't touched a military aircraft in years, but the instinct hadn't died. She had buried Phantom 1, the calcine that once made enemies vanish from radar, and replaced her wings with the quieter dream of motherhood. But the sky had called her again. She gripped the yoke and leveled the aircraft with practiced precision. It fought her commercial jets were heavier, slower to respond than the fighter jets she once commanded. But Sarah spoke to the aircraft the way a mother calms a frightened child. The nose came down gently. The engines steadied. The altitude warnings silenced one by one. She activated the oxygen masks for the collapsed crew, though deep inside, she already feared they were beyond help. She checked communications again, still dead. No outbound signal. Whatever knocked out the pilots must have affected their internal system too. She switched frequencies manually, bypassing the panel the way she'd once been trained to do in worst-case scenarios. Static at first, then faint, then clearer. Unidentified aircraft on heading 280 altitude 370. You are now intercepted. Confirm pilot status. Sarah exhaled a single breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. She pressed the radio switch. "This is Civilian Flight 447. Both pilots are incapacitated. I am attempting to regain full control. She hesitated, only briefly, then added the piece she knew air defense needed to hear. Operator code Phantom 1. The silence that followed was different. Not static, not confusion. It was the brief, heavy pause of trained military personnel realizing they weren't speaking to a stranger, nor an amateur, nor even a civilian. They were speaking to someone whose file still existed in military vaults under heavy lock. Then the radio crackled again. Phantom 1, we read you. 2 F-18s on your left and right. We're with you. Sarah blinked back a rush of emotion. She never thought she'd hear that voice again. Colonel James Harwood, once her commanding officer. Once the only man who believed she could become the youngest ace pilot in her division. She turned to the left cockpit window. 2 F-18 Super Hornets slid into perfect formation. Green position lights glimmering like protective guardians in the fading daylight. Their wings dipped in acknowledgement. Not quite a military salute, but close. Phantom 1. Harwood continued, what's your condition? Sarah adjusted herself carefully against the seat, aware of the life inside her kicking softly, almost sensing her stress. I'm 7 months pregnant, she confessed. Mobility limited, but I can fly. The radio was silent for a fraction of a second, as if even hardened fighter pilots needed a moment to absorb that revelation. Then Harwood replied, steady and firm. Copy. You're not alone up here. Follow our lead. Sarah scanned the instruments. Fuel was dropping faster than she liked. The autopilot was dead. One of the airspeed indicators fluctuated erratically. Landing would be difficult, but not impossible. Then she noticed something worse. The right engine temperature warning flashed amber dot. She tightened. Her grip on the throttle, the fighter jet to her left, radioed in. Phantom 1, we're reading elevated temps on your number 2 engine. Possibly a bleed issue. She swallowed. Roger. Trying to stabilize. Do not push it too hard, Harwood warned. We will guide you to the closest runway. Negative, Sarah replied instantly. Closest runway puts us over mountainous terrain. If the engine fails there, I don't have enough altitude or thrust for glide. She wasn't thinking like a civilian pilot, she was thinking like a tactician again, calculating wind, weather, terrain, descent, arcs. Her mind worked with frightening precision. What's your choice? Harwood asked, trusting her instinct like he always had. Longest runway within reach. Flat terrain below, I can glide if I have to. Harwood absorbed this for a breath before responding. We'll escort you. Sarah adjusted the heading manually. The F-18s tightened their formation, keeping her exactly on track. She felt their presence like shoulders pressed to hers. Holding her up, the cabin behind her trembled slightly as turbulence caught the plane. Her belly shifted with her, a reminder she wasn't flying alone. Inside the cabin, passengers whispered, panicked, prayed. A flight attendant knelt beside a young mother, trying to soothe her crying infant. A businessman clutched the armrests so tightly his knuckles turned white. 2 teenagers pressed their faces to the window, mesmerized by the fighter jets flanking them. None of them knew who was flying. None of them knew the woman they'd politely offered extra leg room to 30 minutes ago was the same pilot who once disappeared over enemy lines and returned with fuel so low that gauges were blank. Back in the cockpit, Sarah's breathing became shallower. The adrenaline that kept her sharp now clashed with the physical strain of pregnancy. A sudden cramp shot across her abdomen. She winced, but didn't loosen her grip. Harwood heard it in her voice. Sarah, talk to me. You all right? She nodded, even though he couldn't see her. Just focus. Phantom 1, he said gently. You don't have to prove anything. But she did not to him, not to the world, but to the child inside her. To show that bravery wasn't a choice one made when convenient. It was a duty one embraced when the world needed it most. The engine temperature spiked again. A warning alarm blared, engine 2 overheating. Phantom 1, shut it down before it blows, Harwood ordered. She hesitated only half a second then. She cut the fuel line. The engine died with a low groan, and the aircraft jerked violently to the right. The passengers screamed as the cabin tilted. The fighter jets moved closer instantly. You're down to 1 engine, Harwood said. But you can glide this. You've done worse. Her eyes watered from the strain. That was a long time ago. Skill doesn't age, he countered. Stay with me. She trimmed the aircraft, fought the drag, corrected the yaw. The commercial jet steadied again, though its reduced power meant it descended faster than ideal. She didn't have minutes to spare, she had seconds. The Portland runway appeared in the distance like a silver promise through the evening haze. Harwood's voice came through, slow and controlled. Phantom 1, you're clear to land. The runway is yours. She aligned the aircraft, the nose slightly up, gliding in. Her baby kicked again, harder this time. I know, she whispered to her belly. Just a little longer. Altitude dropped 2,000 feet. 1,500 crosswinds pushed suddenly from the left. The plane wobbled. Sarah adjusted instantly, sweat dripping down her temple. At 300 feet, the single engine coughed, sputtered. No, no. Stay with me, she whispered. At 200 feet, the plane dipped too fast. The fighter jets broke formation, giving her space at 100 feet. Sarah pulled the nose up perfectly and committed. The wheels slammed onto the runway, sparks briefly dancing beneath the weight. The aircraft bounced once, twice, then rolled. Reverse thrusters engaged unevenly on one side, but she corrected it. Fighting the skid, the jet slowed, stopped, slopped, silenced. For 3 heartbeats. No one moved. Then a baby cried, and as if signaling the entire cabin, passengers erupted in sobs, laughter, prayers, applause that echoed like thunder. Sarah released the controls. Her hands trembled violently. Tears slipped down her cheeks, not from fear, but from relief. She placed both palms over her belly. We did it, she whispered to her child. The cockpit door burst open. Flight attendants stared at her in stunned disbelief. You landed us, one whispered. She nodded, exhausted. On the tarmac, the 2 fighter jets taxied past, their canopies lifting. Both pilots stood inside their cockpits and performed a perfect military salute toward her. Aircraft, not toward a captain, not toward a soldier, toward a 7-month woman who had saved 300 lives, and toward the legend known only by one name, Phantom 1,